Claude hits 96.5% on physics problems and beats ChatGPT on real-world coding by 13 points, yet both charge you the exact same $20 a month. That gap matters a lot depending on what you're actually doing with these tools. Both tools just got major updates in 2025, so the old comparisons are stale. I went through 13 verified sources, official model cards, pricing pages, and benchmark data, comparing Claude versus ChatGPT across 5 categories to see who actually wins your workflow. The overall score ends up almost dead even, but one test completely changes the math for anyone doing research or document-heavy work, and I'm not going to tell you which one wins that until we get there. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. I went through every number both companies will actually stand behind, scored only where the evidence was solid, and left the gaps unverified, rather than make stuff up. You've probably just picked one of these and moved on. But if you're paying $20 a month, or $100, or $200, the wrong pick means you're leaving real capability on the table every single day. And this is for anyone doing coding, research, or heavy document work at scale. Alright, so test 1, reasoning and problem solving. When your model gives you a wrong answer on a multi-step physics or math task, you might not catch it, and that bad output ships downstream into whatever you're building. What surprised me here is how split this is. Claude's 96.5% on physics problems and 62.3% on SWE bench are strong numbers, but I couldn't find a ChatGPT equivalent for physics anywhere. Flip side, ChatGPT ranks 89th percentile on Codeforce's competitive programming, and I couldn't track down a Claude equivalent for that either. This one's a tie. Claude dominates structured physics and real-world coding tasks. ChatGPT dominates competitive programming and math Olympiad stuff, and they're just strong in different lanes. Score stays at 0-0, one tied, which is kind of the honest answer here. Now test 2, pricing and plans. The number that matters here is $200 a month, because that's where both tools top out on consumer plans. And if you're scaling a team or hitting API limits, picking the wrong pricing structure can cost you way more than the subscription difference. So both charge $20 a month at the mid-tier and both go up to $200 at the high end. Claude's API pricing is pretty clear. $5 per million input tokens, $25 per million output, with batch discounts up to 50% off. I couldn't find a comparable ChatGPT API pricing sheet for a direct apples-to-apples look, which is worth keeping in mind. The gap is smaller than it looks at first. ChatGPT has a $8 a month Go plan that Claude doesn't match, so if you want a cheaper entry point, ChatGPT wins that. But for developers hitting the API, Claude's transparent pricing with caching discounts up to 90% off could save you a lot at volume. Pricing is another tie. At the subscription level, they're basically identical, and the API comparison doesn't hold up because ChatGPT's pricing just isn't something I could verify. 2 tests in, 2 ties, Claude 0, ChatGPT 0. Okay, test 3, speed and latency. A solo dev shipping a product on a Friday deadline needs to know if the tool is going to stall on them. Claude's sequential tool calls can add 300 to 800 milliseconds each, and that stacks up fast when you're literally hammering it through a long task. What I found here is kind of frustrating. There's no published head-to-head latency benchmark for either product. Claude Haiku is built for speed on simple tasks, and ChatGPT's GPT-4o Mini is their fast option too. But both slow down a lot on complex or long context tasks, and I couldn't pull comparable numbers to call a winner. Speed is a no-winner, no comparable data, so I'm not going to fake a call, and 3 tests in, we're still sitting at 0-0 with 3 no calls, which is the honest answer when the data just isn't there. 2 tests left, and the next one is where the tie actually breaks, because context window size is the one number that changes the whole calculation for anyone doing research or document analysis, and the gap here is way bigger than I thought it would be. Test 4, context, window, and document handling. The day your tool cuts off a 400-page document mid-analysis and loses the thread, you lose hours of work reconstructing what it missed, and if you're feeding in long research papers, legal docs, or full code bases, the token limit is the ceiling on what you can actually do. What surprised me is just how big this gap is. Claude gives you 200,000 tokens on the Pro plan, which handles around 500 pages of text. ChatGPT's 128,000 token figure is community reported, not officially confirmed by OpenAI, so take that with a grain of salt. At the enterprise level, Claude goes up to 1 million tokens, and I couldn't track down a comparable ChatGPT number anywhere. Claude takes this one, and it's not close. 200,000 tokens versus 128,000 is a 56% bigger window, and at the enterprise level, the gap is even wider. The difference turned out to be way more decisive than I thought going in, which puts Claude up 1-0 with 3 ties. Alright, Test 5, Coding and Technical Tasks. You've probably heard both tools are solid for code, but 62.3% versus 49% on real GitHub issue resolution is a meaningful gap, and if you're shipping software every week, that difference compounds into a lot of bugs that one tool catches and the other doesn't. So I looked at both coding benchmarks, and here's what we got. Claude scores 62.3% on SWE Bench Verified, which is real-world software engineering from GitHub issues, versus about 49% for competitors. ChatGPT hits 89th percentile on Codeforce's competitive programming, and a Claude equivalent. For that just isn't something I could find. Claude Opus 4.7 also showed a 13% lift over Opus 4.6 on internal benchmarks, though that's vendor claimed. Coding is another tie, and that's the right call. Claude wins real-world software engineering, ChatGPT wins competitive programming, and they're just optimized for different coding tasks. Final score, Claude 1, ChatGPT 0, 4 tied. Claude wins on context window, full stop. 200,000 tokens on Pro, up to 1 million on Enterprise, versus ChatGPT's 128,000. It also wins real-world software engineering at 62.3% on SWE Bench, hits 96.5% on physics problems, and has a transparent API pricing structure with batch discounts up to 50% off. ChatGPT wins competitive programming at 89th percentile on Codeforce's and hits top 500 US students on the AME Math Olympiad qualifier. Its free tier gives you 10 messages every 5 hours with GPT-5, which is more generous than Claude's free plan, and the 7-tier pricing ladder starting at 8 TOS a month gives you more entry-level flexibility. The result was 1 decisive gap and 4 ties, which honestly wasn't what I thought I'd find going in. The decision rule is pretty simple. If you do research, document analysis, or long context work, get Claude. 200,000 tokens on Pro changes what you can actually do. If you need competitive programming or a cheaper entry point, ChatGPT is the pick. One number, one call. I ran Claude code head-to-head against Cursor Next, and the context window advantage flips in a really interesting way when you're working inside an actual IDE all day. So if that's your workflow, that comparison is already on the channel.